Welcome to In Their Own Words, a conversation series where we honor the stories that live between loss and love. I'm your host, Simone Burke Cousins, founder of Bereavement and Beyond. Here, we make room for honest conversations about loss, caregiving, and life's unexpected transitions by listening to the stories of those who have lived them. These conversations are not therapy, but they are real, reflective, and held with care. If something in today's episode feels tender, take the space you need. Wherever you're listening from, thank you for joining us.
I've had the privilege throughout my lifetime to meet some wonderful, wonderful women. And today I have with me someone who I have just met in the last less than a year, and she's become such an integral part of my life. Since we've met, we've just connected and we have been friends ever since. I'd go as far as to say that she has become like a sister to me. And I had the wonderful privilege of meeting her in real life yesterday alongside her husband and her beautiful niece. So today I have with me Marcella Crank, or do you go by Sandy Ford?
Frank.
Marcella Crank.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Marcella Crank. And I'm going to allow her to speak about herself because oftentimes when we are talking about grief, we tend to talk about what we've lost and shy away from who we are as individuals. But behind every grief story, there is an individual. So I'm going to allow her to introduce herself and then we will dive right into today's discussion.
Well, thank you, Simone, for a great introduction. You didn't tell me I was going to have to introduce myself. It's so interesting how a lot of times we have a difficult time, like, so what should I say about myself?
Mhm. Yes.
So I will just jump in and say that, first of all, I feel the same way about you. It's just amazing how close we've gotten in such a short
Mhm.
period of time. Like we've known each other all our lives. And we met in a mutual business type of setting group. And so I'm just very grateful for the group as well. I am a retired Air Force veteran. I was in the military for 23 years and 7 months. The funny
Mhm.
part about that is that, I had friends that were in a long time too. And all of those, because all of those people who reached 20 and they stayed longer, I would tease them and go, "What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? You scared to be a civilian?" And then here
Mhm.
I am, 23 and over 23 years. But I say this to everybody that if you're having fun, keep doing it. And that's what it was. I was having fun. So I kept doing it. And then I went into the civilian world for a little while. While I was, working, I've always been kind of like an entrepreneur. Not always, but in my adult life, I used to sell real estate. Then I went and I had a huge bath and body business. And now I am a life coach helping people, high capacity women that don't believe in rest.
Mhm.
So, yeah. And I've had a full life, full life.
Wonderful. Thank you for that beautiful introduction of yourself, Marcella. And I learned quite a bit about you just now. We've known each other, but we're still knowing each other. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you for
Mm-hmm.
sharing that with me and the wider audience. And if you are so inclined, I'm asking you to please share, like, and subscribe. You never know who will be impacted by what we speak about in this series. Um, You said something just now. At the end of it all, you lived a full life. But when you were trying to figure out what you were going to talk about, you mentioned that you wanted to speak about not having any children. And we know,
Hmm.
and I always say it and remind people that grief and loss goes beyond death. There are many other things
Hmm.
that people grieve about, to include not having any children. So I've
Hmm.
invited Marcel on this platform to share her experience in her own words.
Yeah.
Marcella, you've lived your life to the fullest, and growing up, I know for me, the perfect life and living life to the fullest would include getting an education, getting the job, getting the car, getting married, and of course, having the children.
Hmm.
But you did not have that. How
Right.
was that for you? And how would you frame it in the lens of grief?
So for me, that is really true. The ideal situation.
Mhm,
Um, so I'm going to be very vulnerable and transparent. So before I joined the military, I got pregnant at 21,
mhm,
um, and I had a miscarriage. And then when I joined the Air Force, when I was in tech school, that's where you learn your trade. I hooked up with this guy. And he shouldn't have been doing that because he was permanent resident and I
mhm,
was a student. But anyway, we hooked up and I ended up getting pregnant. And I called him and he was like, "Why are you calling me?" kind of thing, you know?
mhm,
And so because I had just joined and, my parents, I didn't have any parents. My mom died when I was 20.
mhm,
And I didn't really have any family. And I just joined, so I didn't have really any connections. I chose to have an abortion.
mhm,
And so from that time, after that time, a couple of years later, I got saved. And so I abstained from having sex. And
mhm,
so I was waiting to get married. And before I got married, I was contemplating on maybe doing foster parenting and talking to a lot of people and talking to the guy I was seeing at the time.
mhm,
I just didn't feel like I should do it, you know? And so time went on and I ended up getting married at 54. So my childbearing years were gone.
long gone.
Right. And so, it always kind of left a hole. I have always been a one who mentors, younger people. I've
Mhm,
had younger people live with me before. But it's still, and it's so interesting. I know that you've talked about Mother's Day quite a bit. So Mother's Day kind of affects me. And because, some people believe that, well, if you didn't birth a child, you're not a mother. But
mhm,
I feel like, in a way, I'm a mother because of the input that I have in young people's lives. But the fact of the matter that I never did birth a child. So
mhm,
that is the grief that I have. And,
mhm,
and for years and years and years, it used to really bother me, especially because I had an abortion. If I
mhm,
had, I think I may have felt differently if I had a miscarriage. And then I would kind of believe that, well, I guess it might not be meant to be. But then
mhm.
again, I don't really know because it's still the same that you don't have a child, right?
Right.
But it may be a little different. I don't know.
Yeah.
So for years, that like really, really plagued that I didn't have any children. And Look, this is a funny story, and it's coming up, so I'm going to share it. That so my mom, back in the day, parents had you early, you know, in their 20s, and my mom had me when she was 34, and I would always call her an old mom. I called her the old mom, and I told her one time, I said, I am, I had a mouth too, but I said, I'm not gonna be an old mother like you. I'm gonna meet
Mm-hmm.
somebody that looks good, and I'm gonna have a child early in life. And it's so funny because really the guy that I ended up getting pregnant with, he was very nice looking. And so if I had gone through with what I said, maybe I would have had a child, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I did tell her that a couple of times. I'm not going to be an old mother like you. That was
Yeah.
the times when she made me mad or something. She didn't let me have my way. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. Thank you so much for sharing and for being vulnerable. I'm sure it took a lot out of you to share that, so I really appreciate it. And it's so many things that you said that we could unpack, and maybe some of it will come up. But what is standing out to me is that even in the midst of us making a conscious choice, there can still be grief around it because that was something
Mm-hmm.
you did by your own volition. But it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make it any less painful, even though you are the
Mm-hmm.
one who decided. Right. So
Yeah.
that's something
Yeah.
that jumped out to me in all of what you just shared. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm an old mom too. I had my first kid at 35 and the other one at 36. So I would be an old mom. But yeah, I'm so sorry you went through that. And it must have been tough navigating life as a young lady without your mom. Yes, you need both parents, but for me, there's just something about having a mom
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
would guide you through certain developmental changes and stages. And
Mm-hmm.
always a thing with, girls and their moms going through certain parts of life, so I don't want to say you were strong because I'm sure you had your moments, but I'm happy that you made it through with some life
Mm-hmm.
lessons to be here sitting down with me today and sharing your wisdom, knowledge, and experience with those who may be watching and maybe experiencing something similar. So, again, I really appreciate you sharing that. Tell me though, you mentioned that you were alone, you didn't know anybody at the time, you didn't have too much of a support or connection. How did you
Mm-hmm.
cope? Because that must have been a lot to bear as a young lady
Yeah.
in the
But
military.
you have to do what you have to do. Um,
Yeah.
I've lived a growing up a tough life. My father died when I was 6. And
Mm,
so it was just my mother and I, and she died when I was 20. And she was an alcoholic. And so I
mm,
kind of like raised myself in a sense. So and I'm from New York City. So all of that, you know, combined, we're gonna make it
yeah.
regardless. And as a matter of fact, it's so funny. My uncle is the one who told me to join the Air Force because I had no plans of joining the Air Force. But it turned out to be, like I said earlier, it turned out to be a really good choice that I made.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I'm glad you were able to make that choice with your uncle's guidance.
Uh-huh.
At the end of the day, like you said, we don't know what life would look like. We can
Right.
wonder now that we're on the other side, but we may never know, but that doesn't stop us from having those what if questions. What if mom was still around? What if my dad was still around? What if I had kept this child? There are
Yeah.
so many questions that we will never have the answer to. So the
Yeah.
idea is to find a way to sometimes forgive ourselves, sometimes just find a way to make peace with the past and the present and even the future,
Right.
even though we don't know what it holds.
Yeah.
So I'm happy you had your uncle. And sitting here, you said that you think that you've made a good choice.
Yes. And when you go through grief,
Hmm.
you have good days and bad days. And sometimes, like in my case, it'll just pop up, but I don't think
Mm-hmm.
about it constantly. I mean, some people
Yeah.
may, but I don't think about it constantly. Just
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it'll just, will make me
Yeah.
sad and wish that, you know, as a matter of fact, I don't know if it was because I was coming on here. Maybe I
Mm-hmm.
started thinking about like if I had a child, if I had, in my life, I don't even know what my life would look like because it would
Mm.
be totally, totally different.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah, so, and I believe in God. I believe in Jesus, and I believe that things happen for a reason.
Mm.
I look back and I'm like, well, that was a choice that I made. But then I made another choice be- not to do foster parenting. And my goal was like to maybe do foster care and then adopt. But,
Mm-hmm.
I decided not to do that too.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't want to be a single mom. I think, and then the guy I was dealing with, he was kind of discouraging, and
Yeah.
so those were two choices that I consciously made. And
Yeah.
so every now and then it does come up, like, wow, I wonder, what it would have looked like and what would have happened, but
Yeah.
but nonetheless, we have to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, I had to move on and live the life that I lived, and not woulda, coulda, shoulda, if, kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. And that's grief for you. I don't think you ever get over a loss. You find ways to make peace with it, maybe integrate
Hmm.
it, maybe find coping
Hmm.
skills that can take you through those moments when the waves come, and they will. They will.
Hmm.
I'm a mom of
Yeah,
two, but I still think about my children that did not see the light
yeah,
of day. And just
right.
like you, Marcella, Mother's Day is a sore point for me. And I'm big on both and dialectic thinking, where two things can be true at the same time. So while I was celebrating the birth of my two lovely children, they're the ones who made me a mother. I felt like I was a mother from the very first time I got pregnant in 2015, right? So Mother's Day, it can be heavy for some, and that's why I spend a lot of time focusing on those type of losses that people may not think about there. It's okay, absolutely okay to
Hmm.
celebrate your mom, but I think about the women who may have wanted children but didn't have children, those who may have moms who they're estranged from, those moms who are
Hmm.
mourning their moms. I look at it from different angles. So I
Hmm.
try to think about and include all of those
Hmm.
moms, dog
Yeah,
moms, in
right,
everything
right.
I do.
Yeah,
Because some
yeah.
people would have made the choice to not have children,
Children.
but they
Hmm.
are moms in their own rights. And saying all of that to say to you, even though you did not give birth, you said that you've had the opportunity to make a lasting impression on many people who you've encountered. And
Hmm.
there are people who have living moms who still feel like they don't have moms, right?
Hmm.
So in
Hmm.
that regard, I would say, and I support your feeling in terms of feeling like a mom, even though you've never given birth. You exude mother-like qualities, even in our mutual group. You are the one who
Hmm.
has a soothing voice, a soothing tone that have the ability to calm everybody down. And when you speak, we stop and listen. So those are
Hmm.
qualities that I believe a loving and caring mother would embody. And I see that in you every time we interact, which is every day, by the way. So I would say that, you would have made a wonderful biological mom, but you are a good mom in your own right.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm very happy that you own that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Did you share any of this with anybody? And if you did, what was their reaction like? Did you feel misunderstood? Did you feel unsupported? What was that like if it did happen?
So it's really interesting because it's like public. I really hardly ever shared that I had an abortion.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, hardly ever. There's not very many people who know, and then I'm like on your program sharing it. So that's
Yeah.
interesting in itself. I'm not sure to answer your question. I'm sure I talked to about my feelings with close friends from maybe time to time. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I don't really recall, being rejected or
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
and you know what? And mainly, I think that it would be with women. So I think that in a sense, women kind of, you know, understand in their own way, in a
Mhm.
sense.
Mhm.
But I'm
Mhm.
not too sure if I've ever, I think I got your question wrong, but you're asking about sharing about
If you've ever
grief.
felt unsupported
Yeah,
or misunderstood,
right.
those friends that you shared with, did any of them not necessarily reject you, but did it take a while for them to accept your decision? Did they have anything, negative to say? Did they question your decision? And in the midst of that, how did you really feel? And it's good if
Um,
you had a supportive community who rallied around you. We need more of that because we know that things like these can be lonely. So if you had that very supportive community, that's
when
great.
you, when you say supportive community around what? Around
You
me
sharing your
feeling
story,
grief?
yeah, not necessarily grief. You making the decision to have an abortion and maybe not even having children.
Well, well, um, I did have somebody. Like I
Mhm.
said, I had just gotten to my first duty assignment. And
Yeah,
thank God that there was somebody there who supported me in my decision. I don't, it was so long ago. I'm sure she left it up to me.
yeah.
But I don't want to get emotional, but it was such, it was so hard. Once I made the decision, it was so hard to go through with it. And
Hmm.
I think back then there were people out there protesting, this establishment. And I'm like, why
Hmm.
are they out here? It's already hard enough that you've, made this decision to do this.
Right. Hmm.
So I'm just glad that I had her because she was the only person that
Hmm.
I think knew, because like I said, I was brand new
Yeah.
to uh, this organization, brand new. They didn't know me. So uh, so yeah, her name is Pat. She was there for me. She took me and and I think I even stayed at her house a couple of days. So that was
Hmm.
very supportive. But like I said, so I haven't really shared that, you know. And actually, I believe the reason why I'm sharing it now is because to me, for a long time, it was embarrassing. It was degrading that I actually did it.
Hmm.
And so this time it's freeing, that
Hmm.
I'm no longer
Yeah.
going to allow that to affect me.
Yeah. 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 That's really powerful and profound. And it's something freeing about getting to that place where, you just accept whatever decision you've
Right,
made. You can go back and change the past. Yes, you may have regrets,
right.
but there's something really liberating about just reconciling with whatever happened and just sitting with it, the good, the
Ex-
bad, the ugly, and moving forward in your own way. Not to say that it won't ever affect you, not to the point where you break down or anything. Like you said, preparing for this conversation, you started to have some thoughts, and all of that. So it will come up, but it's very freeing when you get to that place
Hmm.
where, you've made peace with your decision and you're no longer embarrassed or feel like you're shackled to the past. So you are
Yeah,
in a good space, my
yeah.
friend. There was something that jumped out at me, and I know I should be taking notes because I'm so caught up in the conversation. Whatever it is I wanted to ask, it totally jumped out of my mind, but it will come back to me hopefully before we wrap up. How would you say that this experience, not having children, how has this experience changed you? Did it even change you? And this is
Well,
you just imagining what life would be if you had
right.
children.
My life is totally, totally different. Um,
Yeah.
and I say that because, I love traveling.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, uh, so one of the things I didn't share that really caused me to decide to have an abortion is that when you're in the military, you have to, if you have a dependent, you have to give a name, number, address for somebody that can take your child, and is committed to taking your child if you're deployed. And
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't have that. I didn't really have any family at home or anywhere else that I could really depend on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I could just either, you know, that was the biggest dilemma that I faced is like, so if I had this child and I'm in the Air Force and this is my first, so I didn't have any experience either. This is my first duty assignment. I'm just now getting here and just and finding out I'm pregnant, right? Um, so I'm just saying if I had gone that route, I probably would have had to get out the Air Force because I didn't really have anybody that I could depend on, that I could even
Mm-hmm.
ask, would they?
Yeah.
Well, that's how I felt anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, my life today is I kind of feel like I'm spoiled because I don't have any children. It's
Mm-hmm.
all about me. It's all about me. If I had children, it would be all about them, or most
Yeah,
of the time,
definitely.
it would be about them. Now it's like, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
But then, so I make light of it because I don't have any complaints as far as what my life looks like. But
Yeah.
then, having a child, it makes your life richer. You, you, uh, I think it's a blessing to be able to sow in to your seed and see,
Mm-hmm.
what happens. But it's so interesting that sometimes I get in those, oh, if I would have had a blah, 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 and how it would turn out. But then it doesn't always turn out like that, does it?
That is
It's
true.
in your
Yep.
mind. There's plenty of
Mm-hmm.
parents that are like, oh my gosh, where did this person come from? I know it came from me, but
Yeah.
and their children don't care about them. They, disrespect them, and on and on and on. So who's to say? Who's to
Mm-hmm.
say? I would like to dream that I would have raised an outstanding, productive child, but
Yeah.
who's to say?
We don't know who's to say. Yeah, and you're so right about that. Even when we plan and everything aligns, we still don't know what the future holds. So could have had a child and did everything right by them, and they end up in prison or worse. So
Right.
you're right. And what I like about you is your resilience and your ability to take a lesson out of any situation. No matter how
Mhm.
dire it is, Marcella is going to show up with a lesson and something that we can ponder on when we leave. And I just want to pause for a moment and say that conversations like this are exactly why this space exists. So if you're listening, I want you to share this episode with someone who may need these words. I absolutely know that Marcella is not the only person who has gone through something like this, and maybe that person have never spoken about their experience because they were too
Hmm.
embarrassed. Spaces
Hmm.
like these exist. Now, I'm not saying everybody needs to come on in their own words to share their story, but you mentioned something about having that one person. That's not a big community, but you had that one person to get you through that journey. So share
Hmm.
this episode with someone. This may open up the floor for them to confide in you, share their story. And if you can't hold space for them, surely you may be able to point them in the direction where they could access support and community, because we can't do this alone. Grief wasn't
Hmm.
meant to be dealt with alone. We need people around us who will stand in the gap for us, because it's lonely, it's painful, it's ongoing, and it hurts. So having that safe space and support is very, 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 very vital.
Hmm.
Um, how do you carry love forward, Marcella? You've been through a lot, but you're still here, you're still smiling, you're still standing. With all of what you've gone through and are still going through, how do you carry love forward in the midst of the grief that you've experienced?
Well, you have to carry love forward. I am all about love. Jesus was all about love. So you have to, I think, um, I was just talking to my husband and I was talking, I think it was him, but anyway, just real recently, I was talking about, in the Bible, it says that um, love covers a multitude of sins.
Mhm,
So, this world needs love so much, especially nowadays where it's all about hate. It's all about pitting one person, one race against another and all of that. And we need love. We need love. And
absolutely.
so I think that that's part of my mission is to show love wherever I go.
Mhm.
Smile, hi, how you doing? Have a great day.
Yeah.
And not take things so personal.
Hmm.
Um, because a lot of times people will lash out because they're hurting, you know?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so we have to bring love forward. We have to.
Yeah. Yeah. And mission accomplished, because as I said earlier, you are always smiling, and I'm sure you have personal things going on. We all do, but you always show up with a smile. You're like a sun. You radiate that glow wherever you go. So I would say mission accomplished. And you're right. You never know what somebody else is going through, and that one word or one action, no matter how small it is, may be that lifeline that that person needs. So
Yeah.
Jesus is love, and if we say we love Jesus, we need to act accordingly, right? So we
Hmm.
treat everyone, and it's hard because some people out there, I know for me, boy, it's difficult. But you step back, and some people go as far as to say, what would Jesus do? I know sometimes I'll think about that, but saying all of that to say, we sometimes are the very thing that that person needs. So if we can be somebody's son by saying a kind word or giving them a smile, it can make a difference in somebody who is going through grief and may not have
Right,
the support, or have the
right.
support, but in that moment they are lonely. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for summing that up nicely for me. So one more thing before I jump into my reflection five section. What would be one coping tool that got you through your experience that you would leave with our listeners and viewers today?
Hoping to. Well, what came to my mind first, of course, is my faith.
Hmm.
And I think second of all is, uh, I think for me, because I was so lonely. It was having a cat, my cat, Kayla, and I
Yeah.
had her for a long time. It's so interesting because I think about this. I had her for, oh my gosh, at least 12 or 13 years. It was a long time.
Mm.
But then I met Mitch, my husband, and she ended up dying. And I'm like, look at that, right? So I like reflect like that. I'm like, see, I had her for as long as I needed her, and
Exactly.
it hurt me to my heart because you know I was a big fur mommy
Yeah.
to my cat because I had her. Actually, I didn't have her when she was a baby, but like from 1 years old. And
Mm-hmm.
she was my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was. They always talk about cats got their own mind and do their own thing, but I had her
They
so
sure do.
trained, like she wouldn't go in the kitchen, and I would go away, right, on travel, and person that she was a scary cat, so she would I couldn't put her in a kettle or anything. Oh my gosh, she would have died.
Yeah.
So I would have people come in and check on her and feed her and all of that, and they would be like, "You got her trained real well. She'll get right to the kitchen, but she won't come in the kitchen." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, she knows better."
Yes.
But yeah, she was so sweet.
Yeah. So you had your faith and your cat. So people, if you are grieving, you may want to consider getting a cat. I'm a big cat lover, by
or
the way.
or dog,
A
just
dog, a
yeah,
pet,
fur
a
animal.
pet.
Yeah, pet.
Whether it's a cat, a dog, some people may find comfort in having a fish bowl. It's very relaxing watching, fish in the water. So whatever works for you, there is a
Yeah.
tool out there that doesn't cost much that you can rely on to get you through those hard moments. And I'm a girl of
Mhm.
faith, so definitely faith and just prayer is another way
Right.
that you may think about employing in your
Hmm.
grief. Thank you again,
Hmm.
Marcella. So this section is called Reflective 5. And I'm just going to ask you 5 questions real quick without thinking too much about the answers.
Okay.
Just say whatever comes to your mind. Are you
Okay.
ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Ready.
All
Okay.
right. So one word for grief.
Sadness. That's came to my mind. Sadness. Uh-huh.
Sadness. One thing people misunderstand about loss.
That it can take people. I'm taking too long, but what I want to say is that grief it takes people different amount of times to get over grief, and some people never get over grief.
Mhm.
Yeah,
There is no
that's what I want
timeline.
to say. That
Every timeline is
right?
different. Yeah,
Yes, yeah, and that people should be patient with those
definitely.
that are grieving. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you. One thing that helped you survive, I mean, you said it earlier, but there's no harm in saying it again just in case somebody's just joining in.
One thing that helped me survive is my
Mhm.
faith, and yeah, my faith.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing
What
that
did I say
surprised you about,
before?
well, you spoke about your faith and the cat, your faith and your cat.
Okay,
One thing that surprised you about yourself during your whole grief experience or grief journey.
that you can get through it. You know that it's not always. You're not going to feel like that all the time. It's a journey.
It surely is. Thank you. And one sentence for someone who is in the thick of it. One sentence that you would leave with them before you go.
Day by day, one day at a time.
Mm. See, I told you she was wise. She always have these gems to just drop on us one day at a time. Thank you. And different guests will be on the show, and I will forever ask these reflective 5 questions because the answers vary from person to person. Everybody's grief journey is so different. As Marcella highlighted, there is no timeline. You have big grief and little grief, and I can get into that another day. But there are some losses that you may get over, probably the loss of a job, but then there is the loss of not having a child or the loss of losing a child that you'll carry right throughout life. So no timeline, grief looks differently on different people. For some people, grief comes with sadness. Some people, it may come with relief, it may come with anger. So it varies from person to person. And as Marcella said, be patient with those around you who are grieving. If you're not sure how to support them, Google is your friend, but be careful of the information you get on Google. But press what they need. That is one sure way to find out what the person needs. And if they don't know, there are basic things that you can do, like giving them food. We all need food, we all need water. So there are things that we can do to support those around us who are grieving. And let us do it with a little bit of patience and love and understanding. So,
Well,
Marcella, thank you. Thank you. Is there anything you want to add?
yeah, I do, because you mentioned small grief, and then what you mentioned is losing a job. But
Mm-hmm.
I coached somebody who was devastated about losing a job, and this was, I think she was still dealing with it 5 years later, and I think it was to the point where, her life was crumbling. Like, I think she was about to lose a house, and, she was just stuck in that
Mm-hmm.
situation. So, you never know what people are going through, like we said earlier. And
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah.
Go ahead.
And so, it's important for us to spread the love.
Spread the love. And to your point, as I mentioned, grief will look differently on different people. I lost a job and it
Hmm.
was neither here nor there, and to
Right.
somebody else, she
Yeah.
almost lost her house and, her livelihood was gone and all of that. So again, everything is subjective. What is big G for
Right.
me, big grief? Maybe a little grief for you and vice versa. So
Yes.
again, just some tolerance, patience, love, and understanding is what we need in this world overall. But definitely
Yes.
people who are on their grief journey definitely need those from those around
Hmm.
them.
Yeah.
So thank
Yeah.
you again, Miss Marcella, my friend. I love you. Thank you for your
Thank
support.
you.
Thank you for agreeing to sit in this space with me and to share and be vulnerable. And I really appreciate that. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you, Simone. And
You
I
are
love
welcome.
you too.
All right, take care. Until
Okay.
next
Bye
time.
bye.
Bye.
Thank you to our guests for sharing their story with us. To our listeners and viewers, we hope today's conversation offered you something to reflect on, connect with, or carry forward. If something from today's episode stayed with you, consider sharing it with someone who may need to hear it. To learn more about becoming a guest on the show or joining While You Care, our community for those navigating anticipatory grief and caregiving, visit bereavementbeyond.com. Until next time, may you carry love forward in your own way.